Welcome back. You're listening to the panel discussion, Zero Trust in a Hybrid Cloud Environment, sponsored by Equinix Government Solutions and F5 Government Solutions on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests today are DeVarius Peoples, the Chief Information Officer G6 at the Army Corps of Engineers, Paul Puckett, the Director of Enterprise Cloud Management Office for the Army CIO, Bob Costello, the Executive Director at the Border Enforcement and Management Systems Director in the Office of Information and Technology at the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Directorate, Varesh Garg, the Head of Customer Reliability Engineering at Equinix Government Solutions, and Bill Church, the Chief Technology Officer at F5 Government Solutions. We were talking before break about Zero Trust and how that fits in with the cloud, and Varesh brought up this idea of no trust boundaries, applying kind of multiple approaches, if you will, multiple understanding of where the trust is and where it lies. And I want to bring in Paul here for a second from the Army. One of the things that I think is very important is how you adopt Zero Trust in this cloud environment, how you manage the, if you will, different layers, not just of security, but of data and applications. Walk me through a little bit about how the Army is thinking about this.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So, I mean, Varesh made some great points, really, when it came to the privileged access that people typically have in managing infrastructure and infrastructure changes today. And what we've seen, even in the commercial side, is places where you have humans in the loop that have immediate access to change infrastructure, or perhaps they haven't when they should have, is essentially open up these vulnerabilities for attacks and threats. And so our way to leverage, to Varesh's point, automation, and remove humans and manual error as much out of the loop as possible. Don't enable humans with access to secrets when it comes to ensuring that any configuration changes are being done in a way that are being authenticated, where we don't have access to the secrets that they're passing, is really critical. We've adopted this methodology in the Army. When we talk about delivering enterprise cloud services, it's really the Army enterprise and their components for how we extend Army capabilities in a secure way into the cloud. And so all infrastructure changes and configuration changes that are made within that environment, we call it C-Army, is all automated through a pipeline. And there's no human in the loop with the single authority to make changes without this pipeline validating those changes before it goes into production. And these are some of those foundational investments. Dr. Peoples was making the point of there's the financial investment. There's really a time and a skill set investment here as well to make sure that we're building on kind of these new principles for how we're going to be designing and fielding systems in the cloud. There could be this sense of urgency and perhaps the old metric of, are you hosted in the cloud as the big win, is no. Are you leveraging the cloud effectively for your mission and doing so thoughtfully in context of security for that mission? And this means some foundational changes for how we adopt capabilities and learning more about automation and leveraging automated pipelines, creating these policy enforcement points, essentially centralizing on an authoritative credentialing and access service, so we can have this common way of understanding who or what should be connected to each other in real time. And of course, leveraging like encryption at rest in transit, or even in use as well, for how we secure that data as it's being used for the mission. So all of these are foundational investments that you have to make if you're going to actually adopt some Zero Trust principle, and it takes time, it takes some thought. And in order to make those investments provide value, it also means that you need to know where in your mission needs to leverage these capabilities the most. And I think that was kind of evident with COVID, is it highlighted for us just how important it was to communicate and collaborate. That's where we made those first investments in enabling Zero Trust and connecting with one another. So it just helps drive where and how you adopt in a thoughtful manner.
You bring up a very interesting point about this planning, and I want to bring everyone else into it, but real quick, just Paul, on your end, does moving to the cloud make that thoughtfulness different? You have to think about it in a different way. When everything was on-prem, was in your own data center, you could think about it very, if you will, insular. Okay, this is what we have, this is how it works. But now that you're in a commercial cloud, you're in a private government-only cloud, you're in a DoD cloud, mil cloud, let's say, does that change how you approach this idea of security of this? And that's why automation's got to play a bigger role.
So it definitely does. It's definitely a variable. But at the end of the day, when we talk about our mission, we're going to have, and we even have today, a distributed architecture globally. It spans commercial capabilities, private capabilities. And there are different variables that tweak a little bit in the calculus when you talk about a data center that you manage, where you can actually go and physically touch the things that are storing your data. But in my opinion, it doesn't change the principles for how you should actually design your systems in a way where you can share and exchange data in real time securely. Whatever you do in the commercial cloud that you think is adopting zero trust principles should also extend to your on-premise architecture. These are foundational. These aren't essentially variable only for where you're hosting. It's not if you're in commercial cloud, then I guess we'll do zero trust principles. We've seen even today, hosting it on-prem doesn't necessarily make you more secure. We've seen that there's enough use cases where we've seen that's not the case. So it means you have to adopt these principles everywhere. And it's, even to Varesh's point, being thoughtful as to where you want portability and you want to avoid lock-in, right? There are pros and cons when it comes to skill set lock-in, infrastructure lock-in, data lock-in, right? There's a whole bunch of lock-ins that can happen, but we want to make sure that we're still locking into achieving our mission, right? And so you have to make these balances and these trades, but it doesn't mean that the foundational principles you can just throw out the door simply because you own your own data center. This is an upskilling opportunity for everyone.
Let me ask Bob to jump in here for a second from CBP's perspective, because I think the discussion here about architecting and being thoughtful, I think, how are you guys addressing that currently as CBP starts to modernize, as you guys make decisions about what goes in the cloud, what doesn't go in the cloud? Walk me through a little bit about your thoughtful process.
Yeah, there's actually a few different areas, and we are a large IT shop. It's about 5,000 people, so it's a lot. So it's not just supporting the operators, but it's supporting our own people. So one of the big portions of that is how do we make sure that people are comfortable with change? And I'm a big believer that most people who say they're comfortable with change actually aren't. So there's a lot of training going on. There's a lot of assuring our federal workforce that we're in this with you, that we're going to provide the training necessary as we change out from running a very large on-prem data center to going to the cloud and other solutions, because in a lot of cases we can't do it anymore. We ran a great data center for 30 years. I can't keep up anymore. And I shouldn't be investing a lot of money in generators and on-prem solutions because we can't scale to what we need. We're seeing that a great deal now. When I have an encounter, whether it's a Border Patrol agent out in the field or a customs officer, as you come back into the United States, or an agricultural specialist, working on something that just came off a container ship, we're able to provide them so much more information now than we ever could before. And I just can't keep scaling on-prem solutions for that. So there's the very realization as well. Sometimes we have to move to the cloud, even if, all the zero trust stuff isn't ready yet, because we just can't scale, horizontally enough in our data center to accommodate this level of data. So we're doing a lot of different things. A lot of it's educating people, working very closely with our CISO on how we modernize our ATO process and how we do penetration testing, how we do audits of our data. And the real key here is that we are relentlessly focused on making sure that the operators aren't affected by changes that we're making in the IT space. Because there's nothing worse telling people, I'm modernizing your system and I'm so sorry that it's worse than it was before. That doesn't go over very well, especially when these are people, these are men and women that go out every day trying to protect us. Just like the Army's mission or the Air Force mission, it's very similar. So we're very cognizant that we have to make these changes fast, but also measured, and also keeping in alignment the mission of the agency. And we get great support from our commissioner on down for the changes that need to happen in the IT space. But we have to be very, very focused on ensuring that these changes don't have big negative consequences as we improve our cybersecurity posture. Because I 100% agree. I don't think on-prem data centers any longer, except in some very specific use cases, provide a higher cyber security standard or protections than we can get in a properly implemented SaaS solution or cloud-hosted solution.
I want to move us over to the maybe a bigger discussion around why we're talking about zero trust, not just because it's important, not just because of the challenges, but and Bill from F5, jump in here, because I think one of the things that agencies are seeing, the realization is the attacks, the cyber attacks are not just, if you will, kiddie scripts or people in the basement, but the nation states and the like are really hammering on vendors and agencies alike, and zero trust is that next level. Has things gotten worse because of the pandemic or due to the pandemic? Is the attack surface getting bigger? Bill, what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, so I think, pandemic in particular has shown us that, fraud and risk is really they go hand in hand, right? So fraud has been up dramatically during this pandemic, unfortunately. If we look at government agencies which have experienced it, IRS is always a good one where we have these checks going out and people are, either at the state or federal level, people are defrauding citizens by, collecting unemployment that isn't due to them, by using somebody else's name, getting checks and things of that nature. But I think, understanding fraud and risk is pretty core to understanding trust and zero trust, right? We have to understand not only, we don't have to just identify these people, because that's pretty good, and we're getting pretty good at that. The CAC and PIV are very good at establishing that part, but then it's the behaviors of those people once they authenticate. What are they doing? Is this something that we've seen? Normally when Bill logs in, he doesn't normally log in at 3 in the morning and downloads an entire data set. That's not his normal pattern, right? So you start looking at stuff like that at a broader scope versus just looking at ports and protocols and kind of, I'd say the 90s mentality of how we used to protect our systems. I think when we look at applications that are typically exposed to the internet, and we go back to those traditional methods, all we were really doing was just punching a hole in a firewall, right, and letting port 80 traffic, so letting a client directly touch a server. And every time we did that, no matter how well the application was written, it's all written by humans, right? We're only human. There exists vulnerabilities in the applications, and we can't accept having those systems talk directly to those applications without something having the ability to mitigate and understand and essentially do analysis on that traffic and that activity and make sure it's something that users should be doing. So I think everything old is new again. This is nothing new. People have been defrauding information systems for as long as they've been around. It'll continue to be that way. I think we're doing a much better job at building them right from the ground up. But we still got a lot of work to do for sure.
I'll give you the operational perspective from a usage side of the house. I think one of the things that Zero Trust has allowed us to begin to look at even more tightly than what we have, we're operating in a construct now where we have less control over our infrastructure. And quite frankly, as technology continues to evolve, the legacy methodology as to how we provide services, they're changing, because now we're looking at as a service. We're looking at whether it's software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. That means we have less control and less hands-on. So this is the new way of performing cybersecurity. And that means bringing in the zero trust methodologies and the zero trust concepts. And at the height of COVID-19, to put things in perspective at the core, as we were assisting with the alternate care facilities and those type of things on the front line. Our security controls has allowed us, it served us pretty well, actually. But one of the things I will say is in the process of serving us well, it has also forced us to modify how we actually, a lot of our TTPs, to really be able to identify different type of threat vectors, to move forward and aggressively move on our commitment to this continuous monitoring aspect of things as well too. Because being able to perform continuous monitoring versus some of the manual RMF processes, we've been able to really continue to assess the threat and be able to move forward. And zero trust methodologies and principles have allowed us to begin to look at things even at a different level than what we previously did. So those are some of the operational things we've gained from the Corps of Engineers looking at this whole cybersecurity and zero trust methodology as well.
I think that's an important point, that that while everyone was in a rush to prepare for this remote working, the surge, and then delivering services differently, it also gave us this opportunity to be like, okay, what do we really need to do from a security, from an operational standpoint? And actually, it's a great segue. Varesh, you get the last word of the day here. We're just about out of time, but give me a sense. What's the one thing agencies, organizations should keep in mind as they start to move to a multi-cloud approach and start to add in the zero trust framework architecture piece?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when I look at, what Equinix is doing and, how that can be applied, across, different customers, I think, I see there are 3 areas in security where, there will continue to be additional investment, as we focus on multi-cloud and zero trust. Number one, I think there has been a lot of focus on applying preventive and detective controls in cloud. We are applying tools for operating system level security, container level security, services level security, application level security, data level security, and light bulbs are going on in all of these tools in terms of their finding security alerts and events and vulnerabilities. So I think one of the key focus that we are adopting ourselves, and I recommend everyone, is to hey, we have done a lot of investment in last few years in implementing security tools, and now it is time to do the automation of the remediation of the vulnerabilities and the events that you will discover in those tools, right? So that's one area where I recommend that we sort of put together a roadmap and we start working on aggressively. The second,
right, and let me jump in, Varesh. Unfortunately, though, we're just about out of time, so I just want to say goodbye to everyone. Thank them for their time. You've been listening to the panel discussion, Zero Trust in a Hybrid Cloud Environment, sponsored by Equinix Government Solutions and F5 Government Solutions on Federal News Network. So let me thank my guest, DeVaris Peoples, the Chief Information Officer, G6 for the Army Corps of Engineers, Paul Puckett, the Director of Enterprise Cloud Management Office for the Army CIO, Bob Costello, the Executive Director at the Border Enforcement and Management Systems Directorate for the Office of Information and Technology at the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Directorate, Varesh Garg, the Head of Customer Reliability Engineering at Equinix Government Solutions, and Bill Church, the Chief Technology Officer at F5 Government Solutions. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. I'm Jason Miller. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Equinix.